A wealthy businessman decided to dress up as a cab driver and pick up his own daughter. Michael Carter thought slipping into a driver's disguise would be a clever way to surprise his little girl, Emily. But as the ride went on, the words she spoke cut deeper than any loss he had ever faced in the boardroom. Emily admitted that sometimes she pretended to her friends that she had a different dad, one who always showed up, because her real father never seemed to have the time. In that instant, Michael's cover crumbled. The man who owned towers and companies found himself undone by the truth spoken by the one person who wanted his presence more than all his wealth. Michael's life was mapped out down to the minute. Meetings piled up, assistants buzzed around him, and even the skyline of New York seemed to bend to his schedule. But at home, things were different. There was distance. Emily circled around him politely, bright and kind, yet always far away. He noticed how she'd tighten the strap of her backpack when he entered the room, how her eyes would drift to the floor when he promised he'd make it next time. Those promises stacked up like paperwork. More and more often, Michael woke before dawn, sitting alone at the kitchen island while the fridge hummed in the still, cold house. A warm mug sat in his hands as his phone lit up with photos he always meant to frame. In every one, he was missing, sending drivers, sending flowers, sending tickets. He couldn't escape the thought that he had outsourced fatherhood like another task on a list. The realization didn't strike like lightning. It crept in slowly, quietly, like an embarrassing thought. What if he just showed up without the armor? What if he listened without rushing in with polished answers? He pulled an old jacket from the back of his closet, one that still carried the smell of dust and forgotten winters. He tried on a cap in front of the mirror, tugged it lower, practiced blinking slower. His fingers flexed as if he were rehearsing a role, trying to find the calm rhythm of someone waiting for fares. Through a favor, he borrowed a yellow taxi, slipped his friend a wad of cash, and asked no questions. The vinyl seat stuck to his palms as he sat down. A little pine tree air freshener swung from the mirror, tapping with each breath of air from the vent. He flicked the meter on and off, the clicking sound steadying his nerves. At Emily's school, life spilled out in backpacks and chatter. Mom stood near the curb, whispering as cars pulled up. "That Carter family, always a driver," one said. Another added, not unkindly but firmly, "Never see the dad." Michael kept his eyes forward, fingers tightening around the wheel. He watched Emily through the windshield, her small shoulders, her cautious steps, the way she tied her ponytail herself. A crossing guard raised a hand, traffic idled, and autumn sunlight slid across chrome and glass. Michael tried rehearsing the first thing he'd say, then tossed it out. No scripts this time. Just listening. A teacher bent down to speak to Emily, and she nodded, but without smiling. Kids darted past, parents called out reminders about practice and schedules. The easy rhythm of families who had time together hung in the air. On the sidewalk, two teens passed by, speaking just loud enough for him to hear. "Must be nice, all that money," one muttered. The other replied, "Yeah, but you can't spend time like cash." The words stung because they were true. Michael rolled the window down slightly. The air carried the scent of pencil shavings and warm asphalt. His pulse slowed. He adjusted the rear view until all he could see was the back seat, not his own reflection. When Emily stepped off the curb, he tapped the horn, just once, soft, forgettable. She hesitated, scanning for the usual black sedan. But today, there wasn't one. Just an old yellow taxi with a man she didn't recognize, cap pulled low, hands steady on the wheel. She glanced at the school, then back at the cab. The strap on her backpack creaked as she tightened it. Michael swallowed, softened his shoulders, and unlocked the back door. He hadn't come to perform, he had come simply to be there. To let the world shrink until all he could hear was his daughter breathing, and maybe, for once, breathe with her. The door handle clicked, louder than it should have in that small space. Emily slid into the back seat, her backpack resting against her knees. The vinyl squeaked as she settled in. Michael kept his eyes on the rear view, his cap tilted low, but her reflection was there, serious face, lips pressed together, holding something back. "Where to?" Michael asked, his voice softened by the gravel he had practiced. Emily gave the address automatically, like she'd said it many times before, then went quiet. The silence pressed against the cab until even the hum of the engine felt heavy. He pulled away from the curb, tires crunching over loose gravel. Outside, parents lingered, waving at kids, calling out reminders about homework and dinner. Emily watched them with a look he hadn't seen before, something caught between longing and caution. Two boys on bikes zipped past, laughing, shouting, "See you at the park." A girl ran after them, shoelaces flapping. Michael's grip on the wheel tightened as he noticed Emily's eyes follow the group, then drop down to her own sneakers. She tugged at the laces, even though they were tied tight. "You like parks?" he asked casually, watching the traffic light turn from green to yellow. "Sometimes," she answered, still looking down. "But I don't go much." The cab rolled past a grocery store where workers unloaded crates. The smell of oranges mixed with exhaust. Michael cracked his window, needing the air to loosen his chest. He wanted to fill the silence, to say something easy, but he held back. The quiet was the only chance she might let something out. At the next stop, two women crossed in front of the taxi. Their words drifted in. "Her dad's never around." "Always traveling," one whispered, glancing at Emily without realizing she was listening. The other sighed. "Money can't hug you goodnight." Their soft laughter cut sharper than they knew. Emily shifted, her eyes fixed on the floor mat. Michael felt his throat close. He cleared it. "Long day at school?" he asked. She shrugged. "Just regular." He tried again. "Got friends waiting for you?" For a moment, her gaze lifted, locking with his in the rearview mirror. Her eyes looked far too old for a 10-year-old. "Not really," she said. "Everyone's busy with their families. I just go home." The words weren't angry. They were flat, practiced, as though she'd said them before to herself. Michael's knuckles whitened against the wheel. He forced a calm breath through his nose. Streetlights flickered to life as dusk settled in. The cab bumped over a pothole, and Emily clutched her backpack tighter. That's when Michael saw it, a small stuffed rabbit poking from the bag, its ear frayed. Emily smoothed it with her thumb, as if the toy needed comfort more than she did. He took a risk, lowering his voice. "If you could change one thing, just one, what would it be?" She didn't answer right away. Her gaze stayed on the blur of shops and glowing neon signs outside the window. The pause stretched so long he thought she wouldn't reply. Then, softly, she said, "I'd change how much I see my dad." The words hit him like a stone shattering glass. She spoke without hesitation, without anger, just truth. Michael blinked hard and kept the cab steady. Every missed recital, every next time he'd tossed her way came crashing down on him. The ride carried on, headlights washing over brick walls and painted fences, but the world inside that cab had grown smaller, heavier. The air felt fragile, ready to break. The taxi rattled along a quieter street now, tree branches arching overhead, leaves whispering in the evening breeze. Emily leaned her forehead against the cool glass, tracing shapes on the window with her finger. Michael stole glances through the rearview, his pulse thudding in his ears. He wanted to speak, to say anything, but he stayed quiet. He had promised himself he'd come to listen. After a long silence, Emily sighed. "You know what's funny?" she said softly, almost like she didn't think it mattered. Michael's throat tightened. "What's that?" She rubbed at the edge of her sleeve between two fingers. "People think it's great having a dad who's rich. They say I must get whatever I want. But they don't get it." She paused, then added, "I'd trade all the stuff just to have him home." The words landed like a blunt blow. Michael's grip on the steering wheel tightened until his knuckles paled. He forced his jaw to unclench and let the cab roll forward slowly. Emily kept going, like a dam had finally cracked. Sometimes, when other kids talk about their dads, about going to the park, or watching movies together, I just pretend. She gave a small, shaky laugh. I make up stories. I say, oh yeah, my dad takes me fishing, or, we play games after dinner. They believe me. But it's all made up. The confession cut deeper than any business defeat ever had. Michael's chest burned, like someone had set a heavy stone on it. Michael blinked rapidly, but the mirror gave him away, his eyes were wet. Emily hugged her backpack close, whispering now. One time, I even told them I had two dads. One real, one imaginary. The imaginary one always shows up. Michael's vision blurred. His hands wavered on the wheel, and he eased the cab over to the curb, letting the engine idle. He couldn't drive another block with her words pressing so hard against his chest. Emily's eyes widened slightly, as if she'd gone too far. She ducked her head, brushing the rabbit's ear with her thumb again. Sorry. I talk too much. No, Michael whispered, his disguise cracking, his voice breaking. He twisted in the seat, the brim of his cap slipping back until his face was plain to see. Tears streaked down his cheeks. Emily looked up, recognition flashing across her face. Dad? He nodded, chest heaving, and reached back with a trembling hand. I just wanted to know what you really felt, without me standing there in a suit, pretending I've got everything figured out. For a moment, neither moved. Then Emily slid forward, clutching his hand in both of hers. Small fingers, warm and certain. The cab smelled of old leather, pine freshener, and now something new, an honesty too fragile to name. Michael bowed his head, tears dripping onto his sleeve. In all his years chasing deals, he had never felt so undone. And yet, in that unraveling, came the truth he had needed most. He sat frozen, shoulders shaking in the front seat, while Emily's hands held tight to his. The steady hum of the engine filled the silence. For so long, he had believed power meant control, control over companies, over money, over time. But here, in a dented taxi on a quiet street, he realized time had been slipping through his fingers faster than any fortune ever could. Emily didn't cry. She only looked at him, wide-eyed, unsure whether to feel hurt or relieved. Her voice came soft. I didn't mean to make you sad. Michael turned toward her, face raw and streaked with tears he hadn't allowed himself in decades. No, sweetheart. You didn't make me sad. You made me see. The silence that followed wasn't empty anymore. It was full, of truth, of love, of years lost and a chance to make them right. Michael squeezed her hand, then reached back fully, pulling her into the front seat beside him. She climbed over the gearshift clumsily, laughing when her backpack got caught. The sound, small, real, nearly broke him again. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her against his chest. For once, he wasn't thinking about flights to catch or deals to close. He only thought about the warmth of his daughter's cheek pressed against his shirt, the faint smell of crayons in her hair, the steady beat of her heart syncing with his. Outside, two strangers slowed as they passed, whispering at the sight of a man in a suit, crying, clutching a child in a cab. Isn't that Carter? One murmured. Never thought I'd see him like that. Maybe money isn't everything after all. Their words faded, but they echoed in Michael's ears. He pulled back just enough to look into Emily's eyes. No more empty promises. From now on, I'm showing up. Every game, every recital, every bedtime story, I'll be there. You're my everything, Emily. And I'm sorry it took me this long to say it. She studied him, weighing whether to believe. Then slowly, her smile appeared, small at first, then wide enough to light up the entire cab. That's all I wanted, Dad. Just you. Michael kissed her forehead, a vow sealed without contracts or signatures. The man who once thought wealth was measured in towers of glass and steel now understood his greatest treasure had been waiting in the back seat all along. As he restarted the cab and merged into traffic, his grip on the wheel felt lighter, steadier. Not as a chauffeur in disguise, not as a businessman chasing another win, but as a father, finally present in the one role that truly mattered. For the first time in years, Michael Carter drove home. Not to a house. To his daughter. Michael learned the hard way that no fortune can replace the gift of time. And what about you? Do you believe love is richer than money? Share your thoughts below, and if this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next one.